Hello, everyone, and welcome to this third session, this third training session on our Prep Your COP coverage series. This is the last session of the series, and today we're going to get really, really practical. We're going to be seeing lots of different tools, different ways to find stories, and different kinds of stories that will work even if you are covering stuff that is quite complicated and technical sometimes. I'm joined here today by my colleagues Elena Gonzalez and David Dixon. Hello, Elena and David. And we have a special guest today. We have Alicia Praga, who's a climate reporter for Austrian newspaper Der Standard. Hello, Alicia. How are you?
Hi, thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Before we start, this session is being recorded, as you know. I usually tell everyone in these sessions and every training session that we do that you don't really have to take notes because we will be sending you everything that we share and all the resources and the recording and the follow-up email, which we will do by the end of this week. That's the case today too. We will send you all the resources. We will send you the recording, but maybe today it's a good exception. It would be nice to open your notebook or your note-taking app because we're going to be sharing lots of resources. Some of them are going to be interesting for you, and some of them maybe not so much. All right, so now let's dive in. COPs, if you've been with us on Monday and Tuesday, you already know, and if you've been to COP before, of course, you know that COPs can be very, very overwhelming, especially if it's your first time. There's a lot of jargon, there's a lot of side events, there's like lots of stuff happening at the same time, and everything happens really quickly and simultaneously. This also to make it even more difficult, if you are there in person, this all takes place in a very large space. With at the same time, there's like tens of thousands of people, all with different agendas, all with different languages and schedules, and every day all that is happening at the same time. In that space is where you have to find your stories and the stories that are interesting to your audience, and that can be really, really overwhelming. So here's actually the first tip. You're going to be walking a lot, so wear comfortable shoes. This is quite important. Now, as I said, today we're going to get really practical. I'm going to be sharing lots of resources and tools with you, and Elena is going to help me as well. She's going to take the role of the first-time COP goer, and she's going to be asking us questions. But please share your questions as well in the Q&A function that you can see at the bottom of your screen, and let us know if you have any questions for us or for Alicia as we go ahead. So now, before we start, let's ground ourselves in the context of what happened last year. As you know, this is COP 30. That means it's the 30th time we're trying to cover this. So last year in Baku at COP 29, it's important that you know what happened there before. If you were here for a session that we had yesterday, we recommend that you go to our website and check it out, or just wait for the email that you'll receive with all the recordings at the end of the week. So my first tip is, before you go to COP, before Monday, that's when COP starts, save an afternoon, maybe on a weekend, with a coffee or a teapot, to sit down and catch up with what happened yesterday in Baku. It's very, very important to know this context. And to do that, there's nothing like a very legendary article that comes out every year after COP that is called the Carbon Brief Key Outcomes. It is a very long read. It's about 20,000 words, but there's absolutely no replacement that I know for it. It goes over everything in detail, everything that bore any importance in the blue zone, which is the blue zone is a part of the COP where negotiators and the press can access. By the way, you'll see me recommend Carbon Brief actually several times today. I have to confess that I am a big fan of what they do. It's just that what they do is incredible. I really like the work. They offer lots of good resources. So even for stuff that I don't mention today, I recommend that you bookmark the website, follow them on social, follow their journalists also on social right away. So if you don't have the time to sit down with 20,000 words, very technical words on what happened in Baku last year, let me give you some pointers. First, the COP29 talks in Baku ended with developed nations agreeing to mobilize at least $300 billion per year by 2035 for climate action in developing countries. This might sound like a lot of money, 300 billion, but actually is very, very, very little money. And most countries and experts argue that the need is actually around $1.3 trillion per year. So we are still quite far. So that conversation is going to continue this year, as you heard yesterday. Negotiations last year was also overshadowed by the re-election of Donald Trump. The EU and China said they would step up to fill in the leadership void, but key negotiating tracks, such as the fossil fuel phase out, were hampered by this US disengagement and emboldened opposition for major fossil fuel producers like Saudi Arabia. Also, in this whole geopolitical turmoil, Argentina withdrew from the summit and threatened to follow on Trump's steps to leave the Paris Agreement, which they didn't do in the end. Of course, geopolitics are going to be super important this year. The US is not sending an official delegation, which is, it's definitely going to be at the center of the story this year. Third, the Azerbaijani presidency, which is representing a petrostate, as you know, faced lots of criticism and accusations of conflict of interest. As with the last few COPs, fossil fuel lobbyists were really, really numerous. Their presence was very significant, and last-minute drafts of negotiation texts sparked some walkouts by climate vulnerable groups, like the least developed groups, the least developed countries, LDCs, and small island states, known as AOCs. Another key outcome included the finalization of the remaining elements of Article 6, which is the article of the Paris Agreement that covers carbon markets. That had been on the table for many, many years, at least in 2019, as far as I can remember, and is one of the most spiky, most controversial parts of the Paris Agreement rulebook, which is now near complete. There was also no consensus on advancing the COP28, that was the one the year before in Dubai, the COP28 stocktake, especially the pledge to transition away from fossil fuels. That question was deferred to this year, as we saw yesterday. So yes, we will probably see conversations around that stocktake. And finally, the whole COP process received lots of criticism from very established key figures like Christiana Figueres, like Ban Ki-moon. By the way, we are going to be offering a possibility to interview and to be present at a press conference by Christiana Figueres in Belém. So if you're a journalist and you're going to be in Belém, reach out to us if you're interested in joining that. The seats are limited, so you would need to reserve. So get in touch with us as soon as possible. You can do that at training@coveringclimatenow.org. All right, so that was what happened yesterday. Yesterday meaning last year. Now let's put together a collection of important bookmarks that you need to come back to if you're at COP. Remember that this session is going to be, it's really aimed to people who don't have a lot of experience. So if you are very used to COP, you know this for sure, but we'll also give you later some more technical and advanced tools. So the first website that you need to bookmark and keep there, of course, is the UNFCCC webpage. And of course, also the COP30 presidency webpage. You have the links there, but we will share all of these later, as I said. And they're super easy to find anyway. So these are your central hubs for everything that is official. This is where you can consult the official schedule, the official program. You can see what event is happening where. That's also where you can download any official documents. I'll walk you through it in a minute. Apart from these two, usually presidencies of COPs and the UNFCCC offer an official app that you can download and which contains more or less the same information that these two websites do, but you can like filter different events and so on to be more on top of it. If you're on site, you will find lots of QRs everywhere to download it, but you can also go and access the links either through the UNFCCC page, or you can do it on the Android Play Store or the Apple Store. The last 3 years, however, I must warn you that press information freedom organizations, large NGOs such as Amnesty International, and cybersecurity experts have advised against using these apps because they were strongly suspected to contain spyware. This year, we haven't heard those warnings, so it might be a good opportunity to play with the app. But if you do so, you're doing it under your own, like assuming the risk. I think personally that the risk is not significant this year because, yeah, the same sources that warned other years haven't said the same. But that's on you. You decide. It does contain the same information, so no worry if you prefer not to download it. So in addition to the UNFCCC and COP30 presidency bookmarks, you would also do very well to save a good glossary. As you know, as I mentioned the other day, COPs are full with acronyms, with jargon. It's very easy to get lost, and it's a complicated environment, especially if it's the first time. So a good glossary is your dictionary, is your translation tool there. I personally like the IISD glossary, which we will share as well. And I already mentioned on Monday. If it rings a bell, that's a very good one. And if in any case, I strongly recommend. All right, so now I'd like to pull down the slides. Yeah, thank you. Very quickly, first of all, remind you that you can use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen to ask questions to Elena and Alicia and myself. And now I will share my screen real quickly. Let me because I want to quickly show you the UNFCCC website, which you have here. Can you guys see my screen, Elena, Alicia? Is that okay? Yeah, all right. So when you go to UNFCCC, you can immediately click on COP30 conference there, or you can just go to unfccc.int/COP30. And here is where you will probably plan lots of your days around this page. Before we go into the most practical part of the page, and I will show you that real quickly, I want to show you also some of this participation and registration part. Because here you have information to participants, and here you have lots of important information, including at the bottom, press and media. So if you are journalists and you're attending COP, this is very important. Of course, you should have already obtained your media accreditation. If you haven't, I'm afraid that it's too late now. It closed a couple of weeks ago. And there is also all the information that you need about press conferences here. If you are working for an outlet that is a TV station, or if you're a photographer and want to get a spot for specific photo opportunities, those usually require reservation. So you have to reserve a spot in the press conferences. If not, most press conferences are open and you can attend without reserving. You can just show up. Also, most press conferences, the official ones at least, and Alicia will go about that later, are webcast. So you can follow them. You don't need to go in person. You can follow them from either remotely from outside Belém, or you can follow them from the press room, which often is useful. But of course, that also has downsides, and we'll talk about that a bit later. You have information here. You can get information about interview requests and so on. This is an important source. Another important one here is to know the difference between the green zone and the blue zone. The blue zone you can access if you have a press badge. You can access the blue zone and the green zone. If you don't have an official badge, you can also only access the green zone, which means your coverage, you couldn't access, for example, the media center inside. Finally, something that is important here, of course, if you have accessibility requirements, you should be checking further information which will be posted here. It's not yet. And the other thing that is very important is the daily program, but we will see that in a moment. All right, let me go back to COP30. Very important here as well, the meetings section. So in the meeting sections, you have this overview schedule. This one is not the one I would recommend you to bookmark. This one actually downloads a PDF that it's okay to have an oversight, but schedule changes all the time at COP. Everything is moved, everything is changed, the places change, the times change, and a PDF is not very useful for that because it's not, you're going to have to be downloading PDFs the whole time. You can see the main conference calendar here, actually. Of course, yet it's not quite full yet. It will be for once the conference starts. But here is basically all the official meetings that are happening. Very important here, this limited access. This means you as a journalist cannot usually access this meeting. And there's others that have open meeting. That means that you as a journalist are welcome to attend that meeting. That is a very important difference. And also this one, webcast upcoming. That means that at the time that the conference happens, there will be a link here and you can see this event remotely. This is very, very important if you're covering this the COP remotely, but also because COPs usually happen, as I said, over a very large venue, and sometimes you're just too far, and it's easier for you to just watch remotely sitting at the press center or a cafe. Yeah, so this is very important. Bookmark this. This will be where you spend every morning planning what to do the rest of the day, seeing what's coming up, and so on. Please remember that this is just the official UNFCCC schedule. So anything that organizations organize on their own or in their pavilions, etc., often doesn't live here, and you need to find it somewhere else. Some more information you can get from the presidency website. This one is more self-explanatory, it's more user-friendly, so I'm not going to go really over it a lot. The last thing I want to share with you before I finish here is the sessions and documents section. This is where you can download the official documents. All the new drafts, everything like that is posted here, and you can download it directly. So as you can see here, COP, that's COP, CMP, that's one of the Kyoto Protocol documents, CMA, Paris Agreement, and these two are science subcommittees, subsidiary committees, sorry, not subcommittees. So these are all already like lots of jargon and acronyms that you can already play with your glossary. And I had to go to this SBSTA once yesterday because I couldn't remember exactly what they stood for. Here you have more links that are super interesting. I recommend, we cannot go over everything, of course, we don't have the time, but I do recommend that you spend some time getting familiar with this, because once you hit the ground in Belém, you will not have time to explore a lot. You will need to know where to find things quickly, because things happen really, really fast. All right, so that's it from my sharing the screen. I'm going to stop sharing now. We'll come back to some more issues later. So that's the official sources, and that's kind of like a mandatory starting point. That's like everybody needs to go through those. And of course, you're going to come back to those constantly. But that's definitely not enough. Only with that, you will be lost at COP. We'll come back to it a bit later, but one thing you have to remember is you cannot cover everything. You have to pick your battles, and you have to focus on those topics that you choose. You might be following forests or climate finance or oceans or civil society and indigenous action, or some of those together. But you cannot focus on everything. You may want to focus only on what your country is doing there. Or you might be interested in a specific region, in the Amazon region, for example, or Central America. You can do a few of these. I'm not saying that you have to choose just one. You can choose 2, 3, 4. but you cannot choose all of them. If you try to follow all of them, you will not be able to do it, because I mean, we're talking about dozens of meetings and documents falling at the same time, and all of them really complex. You cannot do it unless you have a huge team. In that case, of course you can. So yes, it's impossible to follow everything. So how do people keep up? How, when everything is happening at the same time and all these documents is going on, how can you actually make sense of everything that's going around you? Well, that's why we have put together for you what we call a COP survival kit. First, our favorite newsletters. That's of course Carbon Brief, daily briefing. Again, Carbon Brief. This is simply a must-have for any climate journalist, not only during COP but throughout the year. I really like what these people do. I don't know if I mentioned that already, but it is for a good reason. During COP, you can keep up not only with what they do, but also the highlights of global press. So they do highlight and link to what other people are doing in climate journalism worldwide. It's very, very important to keep track. They all are very well linked, very well sourced, and it's daily and it's timely. So I strongly recommend that you sign up for Carbon Brief's daily briefing. Their other newsletters are super useful as well, but for COP specifically, this is a key one. By the way, Carbon Brief also usually hosts a very, very useful WhatsApp channel that is private and is only for journalists. You can access that if you're covering COP. If you're not, I think that it's not okay to join if you're not covering COP. It is not free, but I think the cost is really low. I think it's something like £5 if you're. It's a British outlet, so they charge in pounds. So it's like $8 or something like that. That's an early bird offer, so if you want to grab it, I strongly recommend it. I've been part of that group in previous COPs, and it's really, really invaluable. It's really good. This year I'm not going to Belém, so I'm staying out, but I strongly recommend it. My second recommendation is a climate diplomacy brief that is written by Ed King and Lindsay Smith from GSCC. They write, this is a monthly newsletter. It used to be on MailChimp, now it's on Substack, which is super nice because it looks much better. And you can see all previous issues as well. And you actually need to subscribe to this if you have any interest in COP or the diplomacy world. During COP, the newsletter doesn't go monthly, it goes daily. So you will receive it every morning. And it's a fantastic analysis of everything that happened the previous day. In addition, Ed King is a COP institution, by the way. You will see him if you're there. It's impossible to miss it. And he has a fantastic sense of humor, so it's actually a fun read. Believe it or not, it is a really fun read. And finally, my last newsletter recommendation is the one published by Climate Home News. Climate Home News, if for those of you who know it, is one of the most respected climate policy and diplomacy outlets in the world. They are an independent outlet. They have a small newsroom, but they are really, really specialists. And they are also, and something that is very different, they are really narrative journalists. So the topics are much more narrative, more human focused than the more technical, more analytical stuff that you can find in Carbon Brief or in the climate diplomacy brief. Climate Home News recently went behind a paywall, but as far as I know, I think the newsletter is still available for free. So I recommend that you sign up for that one. Still, if you're into this, if you like COP, if you like climate diplomacy, if you would like to follow this story, I encourage you to consider subscribing because they're independent and they rely on that kind of income and the work they do is amazing. Okay, that's for the journalism, but of course that's not all. You also want to keep track of what's happening and how the civil society sees what's happening at COP. For that, there's nothing like the ECHO newsletter. This is a newsletter published daily during COP by the Climate Action Network, that's CAN, which is a platform that puts together lots of different climate NGOs. ECHO is a very cool newsletter because actually if you're on site, if you're in Belém, you can sit down and read it on paper. They print it and they distribute it and you can read it on paper every single day. the newsletter that you can sign up for is not ECHO, is the Climate Action Network newsletter. But you will receive a PDF copy of ECHO with that one when they publish it. So that's really cool to sign up to ECHO and receive it. And if you're at Belém, to actually be able to read a newsletter on paper, that's quite rare these days. And of course, if you are more technical, if you want to go more in depth, or you're writing for a technical outlet, for me that this is a bit too technical, but you have the IISD Earth Negotiations Bulletin. This is a think tank that really this is the same one that of the glossary that I mentioned before. And this covers not only COP, but many other environmental diplomacy issues, such as plastics and oceans and basically everything in terms of like diplomacy. In addition to newsletters, there are also plenty of WhatsApp and Telegram channels and groups that you can join as a journalist, and that will keep you up to speed with everything that's going on. And this is very important at COP and especially if you're in the venue, because lots of things are unofficial and you need to find out that they're happening through these channels. Many NGOs have them, think tanks, research groups, press organizations, even countries and negotiation groups sometimes have this. So you have to find the ones that are interesting to you. I cannot really go and recommend you the best or anything like that, because it's really dependent on what kind of stories you're covering. The one I am partial to, because the one I've used most and has been quite useful to me, is one from the Brussels-based think tank and environment think tank E3G. That's because I'm based in Europe and they cover a lot of Europe stuff. They are not too overwhelming. They don't send you lots and lots of messages. Most of the communications is very useful. But of course, you'll have to see what's important to you. If you're going to be in COP and you are interested in joining the E3G one, I can give you the details. Just reach out to us at training@coveringclimatenow.org, and I'll send those to you. In general, you just have to get in touch with whoever is doing comms for the organization you're interested in. So you can reach out to Greenpeace, or you can reach out to CDP, or to the organization that you follow. Finally, and while you're walking all over the place or sitting down with the ECHO thing, or you can also catch up by listening to podcasts. And in this case, we recommend Outreach and Optimism, which is hosted by former UNFCCC chief and key architect of the Paris Agreement, Christiana Figueres, which again, we're going to be giving you an opportunity to participate in a live press conference with her in Belém, which you can also follow remotely. Please get in touch with us if you're interested in that event, and we'll let you know more about how you can reserve for that. All right. And that was a lot from me. I'm sorry, I talk a lot and very quickly. So I'm going to shut up for a second, and I'm going to let Elena and Alicia take over.
Thank you, Santi. That was super interesting, all the resources that you are sharing here. Please use the Q&A function under your screen to send your questions. This is a very practical session, as you have noticed already, and we want you to keep the questions coming. I have one for Alicia, because I was wondering, after hearing and listening to Santi with all these resources, all these newsletters, I'm in the position of someone who has not previous experience covering COP. For example, I'm a correspondent in Brazil, or I'm a general assignment who has been covering economic issues, but I'm transplanted into COP, and I only have, I don't know, a 15-hour flight to get up to speed and to read before covering some topics, or to help in that coverage from my media outlet. Among all these resources, Alicia, which one would you recommend to read, to be as prepared as possible? Which one has been useful for you?
First of all, I think I'm realizing how unprepared I went to my first COP. This kind of preparation and run through all these documents was really awesome, and like very complete. I would say. But what I would do is before getting on the plane, is I love to download a bunch of articles to read on the plane. One thing, as Santi already stressed, the carbon brief summary That way, you'll also be busy on a long flight. You'll have plenty of pages to read. But also I mean, this is a bit straightforward, but I would always download articles from last year's that you really liked to get a bit into the rhythm of it. So I would look through the media outlets that you usually go to, your favorites, and also maybe your own media outlet to see what colleagues have done in the last years. Again, very straightforward advice, but I think to go through, like to really see the structures of things that you liked is a good idea. And also there's always articles before COPs coming out with what to expect. So I would download a couple of those, see scan them, what is going to happen. One thing, for example, that you will be hearing quite a lot about, I guess, is the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice on climate. Maybe you followed it. This court issued like a super big legal advice on how on climate litigation. So I would look through that. And then I would otherwise also download specific stories that you're going to look out for, like, do you have a very specific angle that you could need data for? So all of this I would have ready. As more the more prepared you are, the better it's gonna flow. And one last thing that I would also download this time is a travel guide to Belém, because it will be for sure nice to know in which environment you're working in.
Excellent. I forgot about the logistics. So important to be prepared in advance. Okay, Santi, so let's continue. And we have more from Alicia later in the session.
Thank you so much, Elena and Alicia. By the way, usually when you go to COP, transport is free in the city, and this year it is the case as well. So you will I think they have put there's no metro or subway in Belém, but there are buses and you can access them for free. All right, so let's continue now with some more resources. So if you joined us in the first two sessions of this series on Monday and Tuesday, and if you didn't, you can watch the recordings, you already know that this year is an NDC year. That means that countries have to submit the nationally determined contributions, which are their plans to bring down emissions and how they plan to do it. Now, countries are very late to this still today. Most of them are missing their NDC. They should be submitting them this week, but they should have submitted them already in February. NDCs are important not only because they tell us if we're on track or not to achieve some climate goals, which they do, but because they also reflect something more than just the national ambitions. Many countries, for example, depend on international funding to take their plans and goals to term. So if that is uncertain, if you don't know what the big donors are going to do in the next 5 years, the next 10 years, then it's very hard to plan in the long run. And these conversations take place at COP as well. Now, NDCs, if you want to know more about that, please see our session from Monday, which we went in detail on them. But in general, they make for very important stories. And I recommend that you download and review your country's NDC. That is, if they are not late in submitting it, which they probably are. And let's see now how we can do this, how and where we can do it. So the first place to look, as you could imagine, is the official registry that you can find in the UNFCCC website. You can find there and download any NDC, but NDCs are complex, are very long documents. So it's nice to have a way to explore them and compare them, which it is very tough to compare them because they usually use different metrics. It's not an easy document to handle usually. Here's our recommendation. One that I really like is the NDC tracker, which is hosted by Climate Watch, which in turn belongs to the World Resources Institute. By the way, the World Resources Institute, or WRI, has a lot of COP interesting resources. It's of course not as up to date as the official registry, which is, by the way, also not completely up to date, but they do a great job of tracking everything. Usually it's a matter of hours. Now I was checking a couple of days late, but that's as much as it gets. The tracker usually includes maps, it includes graphs, it even includes a tool to compare key elements of different documents, not only NDCs, but actually different climate documents. This is a very, very powerful data visualization tool that you can use to identify stories, but remember to always ground them on real human stories. Data is a great tool, but it shouldn't be the story itself, unless you're writing for Carbon Brief. Of course, that's a different story. Finally, here's another way of tracking and comparing what countries are doing in terms of climate action. Its name, not surprisingly, is a climate action tracker. So yes, this is a tool that is used to track climate action. Not all the countries are included here, but all those that are have much larger profiles and are easier to read, more user-friendly than the ones from the NDC tracker. I'm going to stop here a second again, and I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to show you real quick because we're a bit late. I'm going to show you these tools so you know what I'm talking about. Share, here we go. So here's, okay. Sorry, I cannot see with this thing from Zoom at the top. Let me move it to the bottom. There we go. Oh, sorry, this is not it. All right, so here's the NDC tracker from Climate Watch. It's still loading for some reason. Let me read. Here we go. So now we have 71 NDCs. Oh, they added the European Union, which was not there this morning. So that's good. It's a bit more up to date with Mexico already submitted and Thailand already submitted. And I'm not seeing those yet. But anyway, this is super up to date usually. And you can play with it a lot. It's quite fun to see because if you hover over different countries, you will see what they include, what they don't, and a little write-up. Also here, you can see different graphs. This is a very depressing one. You can see it by global in my global overview, or you can compare different countries. And also you can differentiate by unconditional NDCs and conditional NDCs. This means unconditional ones are the ones that are done with internal resources. Conditional means they are dependent on international funding or other conditions. And here, of course, you have some more information about all the different NDCs. Here you have the legend. This is a very cool resource. I recommend that you play with it. It's much larger than I am showing you. You can really go deep into all these and see different tools to compare countries and so on. Climate Watch data actually has lots of cool tools that I recommend, but this one is specific about NDCs. And this one is Climate Action Tracker, where, as I said, not all the countries are. Unfortunately, most countries in Africa are not represented here, but they have this color code that you can see if your country's climate action is critically insufficient, highly insufficient, insufficient, almost sufficient, or 1.5 compatible. A quick look tells you that no country in the world has 1.5 Paris Agreement compatible climate action, but some countries are getting there. You have Ethiopia, you have Kenya, you have Nigeria, you have Morocco, you have Norway, Chile. So those are getting close to it. If you click on any country, let's see, for example, the European Union, you can see the full country profile. And this is really cool too, because you can see all the specific graphs about this country, in this case, group of countries, and also an actually written summary of what they mean. So if you're new, this is a great place to start understanding what these people are talking about. They go over more than the NDC. So you are seeing here NDC target. So they do follow the NDC, but not just the NDC. Also, any policies, they go is more granular. You can find more analysis specifically about policies. It's super complete. Unfortunately, not for every country, which is sad. All right, so I'll stop sharing now and come back to this. All right, so now one more things I want to share is something that it goes to the nitty-gritty of the negotiations. All right, so when you're covering negotiations, you'll talk to people, but you will also spend a lot of time diving and trying to make sense of documents. And that they are very complex and very difficult documents to follow. All official public documents can be freely accessed through the UNFCCC portal, as we saw, but often they are, as I said, very complex. So another tool that will really be very, very useful to you, regardless of what negotiations you're following, is the text tracker from Carbon Brief again. So it works like this. The texts are put together the first week by either the presidency or like groups of countries, usually in pairs. And they are at the beginning fed by technical officers and low-level negotiators that get to COP during the first week. That's why many journalists only go to the second week. Because these people are not decision makers. They are technicians, they are officers, and they can't put a stamp on things and agree to anything. But they are policy experts, so they know what needs to be in the text. The resulting document is, as you could expect, a mess. Is a whole mess of different opinions, different positions. Countries are bringing in their ideas. Then the second week, the presidency and high-level negotiators come to COP. I mean, presidency was already there. The high-level negotiators come to COP, and it's the presidency's task to remove all that controversy, to find an agreement, a document that everybody agrees on. This is how far ahead is this means how many brackets are in the text. Brackets represent different options being on the table. So when you see a text with lots of brackets, that means little consensus. When you see no brackets, that means consensus. Of course, this is again hundreds, or maybe not hundreds, but dozens of text being negotiated at the same time, all of them dropping at the same time or very quickly in succession. So following them is a nightmare. That's why the text tracker is really cool. And I'm going to share with you real quickly right now. Sorry. Can I share my screen real quickly? Cool. Oh, sorry, hold on. I don't have it open. Let me talk. Text tracker. Sorry, apologies. I thought I had them open. I'm going to share this with you. So this is tracking negotiation texts. This is another tool from Carbon Brief. You just have to slide down a bit. This is very, very important. As you can see here, a shall in place of a should, denoting a binding versus a non-binding requirement, nearly derailed the Paris Agreement in 2015. So that means like the very most minimal of details can make a COP a success or a failure. And here you have the text tracker. So the text tracker is really cool. This is from last year. Of course, the one from this year hasn't been launched yet. It will be launched when the COP starts. But here, something that is really cool is that you can download all the documents. And here tells you how many brackets are left. Also tells you how many pages, and it tells you the topic of the document. You can choose different topics. So you are interested in gender, so you can come to gender. And here you can see, okay, there are two here that have lots of brackets. So you can go and explore what brackets there are there, what are the controversies, and so on. This is so interesting and so important. By the way, a very similar tool that is here is Who Wants What. This is again from last year. I don't know if they will put it again this year, but I hope so, because it's really useful. And this is a Who Wants What database. So you can come here and they will tell you the different countries or different blocks on different topics, and you can choose a topic, how important it is for them, either positively or negatively. So you can see loss and damage. For the LDCs is a priority. For Iraq is a high priority. The different issues inside the topics are. This is super cool as well. And you can look at different parts of the negotiations and see where like possible alliances will happen or possible confrontations. All right, so I will stop sharing now. And I have some more stuff here, but I think we're running a bit late. So I'm going to throw it to Alicia and let some questions for the end of the session, if we have time. Alicia, take it on.
Thanks. Yeah, amazing overview. Yeah, so my name is Alicia Praga. I'm covering climate politics for the Austrian newspaper Der Standard. And we do publish quite a lot on climate, but we are by no means a specialized media outlet. So our readers don't necessarily know too much, nor do they really care about the details of the negotiations. Yeah, I hope I can tell you some things about how we are planning stories that you find useful. One of the biggest questions for us is always which story to pick so readers will actually want to read it. And I definitely don't have an all-fitting answer to that, just to make that clear. And I'm also not so great at always sticking to my plans. But for sure, it's crucial to have such a plan before going to COP. And all these points apply to if you are going to COP in person, especially, but also if you're covering it remotely, and we'll speak more about that in a bit. So my biggest takeaway for choosing a story and an angle, and that sounds super logical, but it's so easy to miss that because once you enter COP world, everything that happens there seems super, super important. But it's crucial to always connect your stories to your readers at home. So every time a new draft text is published or new information on the negotiations are leaked, this will seem like a huge deal. But at home, it really depends on your audience if they're gonna really click on what you published. So at least in my case, a story like a new draft shows a lack of ambition, will maybe not do too well, and also it's quite an expected story. But what we found is that stories that do best were the ones that already had some level of connection to the readers in the headline. So for example, one story that did really well was when a number of countries, including Austria, signed a call to stop fossil subsidies at COP28. That was the one in Dubai. We put some examples for fossil subsidies in Austria into the headline, which, for example, was about were about subsidies that commuters receive for gasoline-powered cars. And this piece immediately got a lot of attention. Like, people wanted to know what is going to happen to their subsidy if they have to drive to work every day. Another example for a story that did really well was about increased support for nuclear energy at COP, which in Austria is a very controversial topic. We are very skeptic about nuclear energy, let's say it like that. And so yes, I'd always keep an eye on anything that happens at COP that you can directly translate to your audience, anything that directly impacts maybe a big industry that your country has, or anything that anything that relates to big debate that is happening in your country. You get the idea. And of course, that doesn't mean to ignore the negotiations themselves. Probably readers will want to know what to expect from the conference, but it's important to avoid climate jargon and to give the bigger picture of what is happening, what is going on, and where is this going to lead us. And in this bigger picture category, one angle that I always find super interesting is geopolitical angles. So as Santiago already said before, one story that will be very big this year for sure is the positioning of China, and also the absence of the United States, which traditionally plays a very active and very important role in the negotiations. So often, like on the last days of before the closing of COP, US negotiators would pull a deal over the line. Like they would always be very active in finding a compromise in the end. We'll see how this plays out in this year. And yeah, we see such big geopolitical shifts at the moment when it comes to climate policy. And pieces that reflect that well can do, I think, super well and be interesting. On the slides, you can also see civil society. I think that's another go-to option if you're looking for stories that are maybe also a bit more accessible, easy to do. Civil society is a great source at COP. There are many organizations and activists monitoring the negotiations. and it's super helpful to keep up with what they're doing. Like they create news themselves by doing like demonstration, for example, and pull attention to where things are going bad at the moment at the COP, but also with innovative ideas like the fossil of the day that is published by not published, but acted out with an actual dinosaur in one of the venue halls. And this award is given daily by the Climate Action Network for the country that is seen most counterproductive and is doing the most to achieve the least. That is the slogan of the Fossil of the Day award. So that could be like an angle that works quite well when you talk about how the negotiations are going on. As a last point, I have here, take readers to Belém. I think in this year, as I said before, to take a travel guide, I think it's going to be quite interesting to read also reportage about the venue, not the venue, but the place outside the venue itself. There was so much talk before about it being way too expensive for many delegations to go, and Lula was saying people should sleep under the stars and so on. I think the location itself will have a lot of stories to tell. So yeah, I'd say take readers to Belém, and I certainly would love to read these stories, not at, especially because I'm not going this year. Yeah, which brings me to the next point. Thank you. Next slide. Yeah, so differences for anyone who covers COP remotely, which can be very tricky. I think at least. In that case, I think it's even more important to really plan ahead which stories you will want to do. Because if you're at the venue, things come up randomly, like you run into something interesting, you see a really weird protest somewhere and get into a new topic that you didn't really notice, or you meet someone over beers at a social in the evening and stumble across the next interesting story. But if you're not there, of course, that cannot happen. So I think it's really important to answer for yourself very clearly what you want to cover, especially if you are following remotely. And maybe you can even do interviews before COP. People are very busy when they are at the conference. So anything that you kind of prepared before, I think is amazing. But obviously, like, you can follow a lot from home as well. Actually, many journalists, when you're there, are in the press room most of the time and follow press conferences remotely over the resources that Santiago sent. So it is possible to do it from home, but it's a bit more challenging to keep up with the talk of town, so to say. And to do these plans accordingly, it's good to know the usual structure of a COP. And yeah, so just a short recap on that. Heads of state and governments will show up in the first week or not. And there are usually no really substantial agreements made in the first week, as Santiago already explained before. That's why most journalists only go to COP for the second week. But there are some exceptions, like in Dubai, for example. They announced a new loss and damage facility in the very beginning, but usually things happen in the second week. But if you're there the first week, there will be still plenty of interesting things to do. High-level people are showing their face or making political messages that can be quite telling about how it's going to go in the next week. Next slide, please. So yeah, I can't get into the negotiation room. So where do I go? So your options are plenary session, press conferences, media huddles. To explain a media huddle shortly, like a media huddle is basically a person that stands in the center and lots of people around listening. It's usually happening in a hallway, for example, that can be negotiator groups, civil society, experts. Like there will be a lot of invitations sent in the different WhatsApp groups that we've seen before to join such media huddles. You can go to events. Events I would treat with a bit of caution, like your calendar will be super full and there's going to be lots of interesting events happening. But of course, the ones that you're really interested in, check it out. At COPs, there's already always really interesting people attending these events. Then the corridors, the media center, the delegation room, which are like at the sides of every COP, the venues have like little kind of offices where every delegation has their stuff and like their laptops, and where they pull back to think of how to go forward. So you can always go and knock at rooms of specific countries that you want to get in touch with. Then also next to these delegation rooms, countries or organizations also have pavilions. That's kind of like little tents that are either inside or outside. It's in the area that seems a bit like a big climate fair. And at these pavilions, you can also meet whoever you want to talk to. And if you have a specific person that you would like to talk to, anyone that you, any source that you really want to find, a good way is always to go to look at which panels they're going to speak, and to go there afterwards to find people afterwards. So yeah, I definitely try to have fun and to talk to as many people as possible, to go to socials, because the big advantage, I think, when you're really on the ground is to make a lot of contacts, future stories. There's so many interesting people. Really make use of your trip, I would say. Do we have a few more minutes? Yeah, 3 minutes left. Then as a last point, how do you find, the rooms? Yeah, exactly. So really make use of your trip.
Cool. We have 3 more minutes. Oh, sorry, I have this feedback. Sorry. Anyway, so I'm going to give it to you, Elena, because I can hear myself and it's terribly distressing. So I'll give it to you to ask a couple of questions.
Yeah, thank you, Santi. Alicia, since you were speaking about, I'm not in the negotiation room because as journalists we can't be inside. So how do I fact check what sources tell me happened inside? Who can I trust? How can I trust? Remotely or on site, as you prefer?
I think that's a really tricky question. You really have to find people that you trust, because there's no documents, at least not immediately, that you can find about what is happening in the negotiation room. So what I would always do is to try to talk to multiple people about what happened in a certain situation. For example, it can be really interesting, like every year there is talk about the strategy of Saudi Arabia to how to delay things, and they always have quite interesting strategies of which agenda points to delay in which way to not move forward. So these kind of things I would just triple check with other people. And then also just be really transparent about who told you what. So if if the negotiator from a certain country told you something, I would just put that into the story.
And Alicia, please, before we go, one final advice before going to COP and go deep in that mess.
One final advice that I haven't done before, given before now. Yeah, I mean, really plan ahead, really know the stories that you want to do, the kind of the communication that you also want to send from COP. You always, like, it's so often the same story that you read from COP. And then I think even for me, and I'm really a nerd with climate politics, and I don't know, there's a big repetition and it's getting a bit boring sometimes. So I think everything that is innovative, anything that is really interesting, any interesting angle that you want to communicate about what is happening at COP is a great idea. And I think, yeah, also have fun and talk to as many people as possible, and enjoy the madness of covering a COP.
Thank you so much, Alicia. Thank you so much, Elena and David. We're gonna stop here. We're at the top of the hour. This has been a very interesting session, and I hope you liked it and it was useful to you. By the way, my final advice too is like, hey, this is, if it's your first COP, if it's not your first COP, you know what you're going to. And if it is your first COP, just enjoy. Everybody finds it overwhelming the first time, and everybody ends saying like, "What the hell just happened?" So enjoy and have fun. It's a very interesting experience. By the way, if you are in Belém and you need help, or just if you want to get in touch, Covering Climate Now will be there. Two of our colleagues are going to be in Belém. We'll also be organizing happy hours exclusive for journalists. So if you are a journalist and you want to have some drinks with colleagues and have a chat, please send us an email. We're at training@coveringclimatenow.org, and I will put you in touch with the right people. And yeah, that's it, I think. Have a fantastic COP, those of you who are going. Enjoy covering remotely if you are doing that, and let us know in any way that we can help you. Thank you so much, Alicia. Thank you so much, Elena. Thank you so much, David. And thank you so much, everyone who joined us today. Remember that you will receive all these, the recordings, the links, everything you will receive in your email by the end of this week. Thank you, and have a very good one. Bye-bye.